I was 24 when I signed a contract that no sane man would agree to. My name is Logan Hayes. I had just been discharged from the Navy after a 4-year deployment in the Pacific. I spent half that time working engine control below deck, drowning in heat and metal. Civilian life felt pointless. Nobody needed another worn-down sailor with a 1,000-yard stare and no college degree. After months of job hunting in my hometown of Juneau, Alaska, I came across a classified ad pinned to a rusted bulletin board in a dockside tavern. It was handwritten in ink, all caps, with a phone number at the bottom. Engine technician wanted offshore facility. Night shift only, $1,200 per night. No questions. Askadima Diate Hyre did not care that it smelled fishy. I needed the money. I needed to feel something again. That night, I called the number. A woman picked up. Her voice was slow, like it was dragging itself through mud. Yes. Logan Hayes, she said, without me telling her my name. Come to Port Orford, Oregon by Thursday. The transport departs from the private dock at 2300 hours. Bring no more than one duffel bag in. Then the call ended. No email, no details. Just a date and a place. I drove across 3 states, with snow churning around me like I was already buried. When I arrived, there was no one in sight except a man wearing a gray coat and a patch on his shoulder with a symbol I did not recognize. A black circle with 3 slashes through it. He motioned me toward a small fishing boat with no name. The ride took 2 hours. We passed nothing but water and the occasional blinking buoy until we reached what looked like an abandoned oil platform. Tall, rusted scaffolding loomed in the fog. No lights, no flag, no sign of life. They called it Site Echo-7. Inside, I was processed without a single word. My ID was taken. My phone was thrown into a metal drawer. I was given a jumpsuit, a locker key, and a laminated sheet titled Mandatory Safety Protocols Night Crew. It had 7 rules. Never descend below level 3 between 2,300 and 0330 hours. You hear footsteps behind you, but see no one. Do not turn around. The red corridor is not real. If you see it, return the way you came. Keep a flashlight on at all times. Even in lit areas, do not speak to anyone not on your assigned crew. Manifest if you find a locked door that was not there before. Do not touch it if you hear your name whispered through the intercom. Do not respond. I was alone on my first shift. The other night tech had reportedly been transferred. The facility smelled like brine and cold steel, the kind of scent that never leaves your lungs. My job was to inspect coolant pipes running along the underside of the central shaft level. 4. That was already a problem. I radioed the control office to clarify the first rule. A man answered, his voice distorted by static. Yes. Descend to level 4, he said. The rule applies only on certain nights. I asked how I would know if it was one of those nights. He went quiet. You will know that, was all he said. I made my way down the graded stairs. The echo of my boots sounded off in every direction. The air got colder. I passed level 2, then 3. Then came a thick steel door labeled Core Access Authorized Night Crew Only. It was already open. Inside I found something I was not expecting. The space was vast, cylindrical, like the inside of a missile silo, only inverted. Huge metal pipes curved along the walls, all glowing faintly with condensation. Below me was a pit, maybe 50 feet deep, and suspended above it was a machine I did not recognize. It looked like a turbine crossed with a sarcophagus. The lights flickered. I started the inspection, moving slowly with my flashlight scanning the pipes. At 0117. I heard the sound. Not mechanical, not human. It was a slow, dragging noise, like wet chains on concrete. I froze. The sound came from behind me. I remembered Rule 2. I did not turn around. The noise passed beside me. The air dropped another 10 degrees. My breath fogged in the beam of the flashlight. I kept walking, eyes forward, heart punching holes in my chest. Then I saw the red corridor. It was not on the blueprint. A hallway, maybe 10 meters ahead, where there had only been a blank wall before. It was bathed in crimson light, as if lit by some internal fire. The walls looked soft, breathing. I took a step forward without thinking. The corridor whispered, "Logan, that broke me." I ran. The hallway behind me stretched longer with each step. The machine above the pit began to hum, then a pulse like pressure exploding inward. A flash of red behind my eyes. I reached the stairwell and did not stop climbing until I hit level 1. At 0332, the emergency alarm blared 3 times, then silence. No explanation. I spent the rest of the night in the storage room behind the break area, curled in a metal chair with the lights turned on full. I did not sleep. At dawn, a new crew arrived. They walked past me without a glance. "Number?" One asked how my shift went. No one said a word. I went to my locker. My flashlight was melted at the tip, and the back of my left hand had a small burn in the shape of a spiral. Something had touched me. It took every scrap of willpower I had to show up for the next shift. I spent the day sleeping in a gray dormitory, 4 floors above the platform's deck, with no windows and no clocks. When I woke, my body felt sore, as if I had been beaten in my sleep. I checked the burn on my hand. The spiral was still there, darker, more defined. It pulsed faintly when I moved. I thought about walking, about packing up and demanding they take me back to shore. But I remembered how the man on the boat never spoke. I remembered the black circle with the 3 slashes. I had the feeling this job had no resignations, only replacements. At 2,200 hours, I reported 2 central operations for a briefing. The same man from the radio was there, tall, pale, wearing thick gloves indoors. He slid a clipboard toward me, without a word. The sheet had a diagram of the ventilation tunnels under level 4, labeled with maintenance codes. My task was to verify pressure valves and adjust the turbine's coolant regulators. I asked him what the turbine did. He smiled, but only with the lower half of his face. "It keeps something sleeping," he said. Then he left. I descended again. This time, I brought 2 flashlights and taped one to my wrist. My jumpsuit's back pocket held a flare and a multi-purpose knife. I strapped the radio tight to my shoulder. I kept thinking about the dragging sound, about the red corridor, about the way the air had turned against me. Level 4 greeted me, like it had been waiting. The door groaned open by itself. This time, it was colder. The turbine chamber was bathed in an eerie green hue. Something in the pipes vibrated like it was alive. I moved quickly, counting my steps and checking the valves against the map. My boots echoed less, as if something was absorbing the sound. At 0006 hours, I found a new hallway. It was not on the map. The walls were the same metal, but slightly darker, almost obsidian. At the end of the hallway stood a door. Not a hatch, not a bulkhead, a wooden door, black lacquered, carved. It looked like it belonged in a church built 1,000 years ago. There was no handle, but there was an indentation, spiral-shaped, exactly like the burn on my hand. My breath caught in my throat. The air changed again. I felt the shift, like gravity bent sideways. I turned to leave. The hallway behind me had grown longer, much longer. Then I heard it. Footsteps, not heavy, not boots, bare feet, wet. I shut my eyes. I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. The air smelled of sulfur and decay. 5, 6, 7. A whisper, close to my ear. "We see you, Logan." My eyes snapped open. The hallway was gone. I was standing back at the turbine chamber, the clipboard still in my hand, my flashlight flickering. My heart felt like it was trying to leave my body through my teeth. I called it in. Control responded too quickly. "Do not document anomalies," they said. Continue. The checklist, that was the first time I understood what this place was. It was not a facility. It was a prison. But not for people. Something ancient lived down here, and someone was feeding it. As I returned to the stairwell, I noticed something scratched into the wall beside the exit. It was not there before. It said, "You were not chosen, you were touched." You opened it now. It watched as I went back to my quarters and did not sleep again. I sat with my back to the door, and the light turned all the way up, staring at the floor. When I closed my eyes, I saw the door. When I opened them, I saw my shadow twitch. Just a fraction of a second too late, I stopped believing in coincidence. After my third night, when I woke, my hands were covered in oil. I had no memory of getting out of bed, and yet the soles of my boots were wet. There were faint red stains on the tips of my fingers that smelled like rust and salt. I tried scrubbing them off in the sink. The spiral burn had changed shape. The coil had extended by another loop, now trailing across my palm like a growing root. At 2130, I headed to the mess hall. It was empty, as usual. I had not spoken to another crew member in 2 days. They passed like ghosts, avoided eye contact, and responded with nods or silence. Everyone was afraid, but no one wanted to name the thing that owned their fear. That night, I was assigned to Turbine Diagnostics with a partner for the first time. His name was Carson Doyle. Heavyset. Calm voice, southern accent. Looked like he had seen death and invited it over for coffee. He was the first one who ever shook my hand. "You are the new guy, right?" I nodded. "You seen the red corridor Yeti?" Froze. "Yeah." I figured he said you'll walk out of it. "You do not talk about it." We descended together. 2 flashlights bobbing along the stairwell into the metal lung of the platform. Level 4 greeted us with a low groan, the kind of sound tectonic plates make when they shift under pressure. As we approached the turbine housing, Carson stopped and looked at the wall near the coolant pipe junction. It was covered in writing. Dozens of messages scratched into the metal. Some were names, some were warnings. One was a list of dates, all between 1981 and 2016, each with a check mark, except the last. None had an author. "What is that?" I asked. He shook his head. "Every time someone disappears, a new check mark appears. No one ever sees who writes them. No one ever sees them leave, either." That night, the turbine made a new sound. It was not mechanical, it was a voice. We were running a diagnostic when it began. A low rumble at first, then a modulation that resembled human speech, buried beneath layers of static. The machine vibrated against my palm, as if whispering through the metal. We both stepped back. It said a name, Logan Carson. S face turned pale. He pulled the radio from his belt. "Control. This is Unit Delton in Turbine Core, is vocalizing, requesting Level 5. Lockdown. Repeat, Level 5. Lockdown." Silence, then static. Then the voice again. "You are hollow. You are the new door. Open the lights." In the chamber died. The only illumination came from our flashlights, trembling in our hands. A shadow passed between us. Not a figure. A mass. Like something behind the air itself had moved. I felt pressure inside my ears. Like something was trying to crawl in. We ran. Carson was faster. He knew where to go. He grabbed my arm and dragged me through a hatch labeled ventilation control, auxiliary. We sealed the door behind us and sat in silence, surrounded by humming machinery and the sound of our breathing. "You should not have come here," he whispered. "I never told anyone about the spiral. Until then." I showed him my hand. Carson looked like he had been stabbed. "Jesus Christ. Marked you. What does it want?" I asked. "Not you, it wants, through you." He would not explain more. He stared at the floor, lips trembling like he was swallowing something bitter and impossible. Eventually we returned, topside. The radio never came back on. We filed no report. The next morning, I found Carson's locker empty. His name was gone from the roster. His bed had been made, folded with military precision. No one mentioned him again, but on the wall near the coolant pipe, the date had changed. The final checkmark was now completed and carved just below it, still fresh and glistening in the metal. Next, Logan Hayes. I reported to Central that evening, but there was no assignment. The man in gloves was not there. The office was dark, empty. Instead, on my bed, I found a new item, a black flashlight, heavy, unmarked. It was not mine. When I turned it on, the beam was not white, it was red, like the corridor, like blood, like warning. That night I did not go to work. I locked my door, I closed my eyes, and in the pitch black of my room, I heard the intercom click on. Soft static. Then my voice. Logan, open the door, let us speak through. Why? I held the flashlight tight, but the spiral burned hot. Like it was listening, like it was answering. The fourth night began before I opened my eyes. I do not know how else to describe it. I woke up to the sound of my breath echoing wrong, like I was underwater but could still breathe. My room felt stretched. The corners looked farther away than they should have been. I touched the spiral on my hand and felt heat radiating into my bones. It had grown again. It was no longer a burn, it was becoming a mark. That evening, I went to Central to check the assignment list. There was nothing. No posted jobs, no shifts, no staff. The monitors were black. Only the intercom was lit. A blinking red light, unlabeled. I pressed it. The voice that answered was not human. Logan, you opened it. We will meet you. At level 5 I should have run, but part of me was already not mine anymore. I went down, past level 4, past the turbine. The stairwell ended in a blank wall. No hatch, no doorway, but the spiral on my hand pulsed once, and the wall slid open. Behind it was a tunnel made of flesh and metal, breathing walls. A pulse running through the floor like a heartbeat. This was level 5. It was not built. It was grown. I stepped inside and immediately lost all sense of direction. The tunnel curved with no angles, no corners, just turns that folded in on themselves like intestines. The air shimmered. Lights flickered on and off in patterns I could not follow. The flashlight in my hand changed color as I moved. Red, then black, then a hue I could not name. The kind of color your eyes invent when they are breaking. I walked until I found the door again. The wooden one, black, lacquered, ornate, familiar. It stood at the end of a pulsing hallway. My breath came in gasps. My skin felt dry. My ears buzzed with pressure. The spiral on my hand glowed. Then the door opened by itself. Behind it was a room that defied shape. I cannot describe its size. It felt infinite and claustrophobic. The floor was made of mirrors that reflected nothing. The ceiling bled oil. In the center stood a shape, not a figure, a presence. It hovered above the ground, long and thin and twitching in unnatural ways. It had no face, just a void, but it had eyes. Hundreds all watching me from inside the spiral. You are the conduit, it said. You walked where time folds you. Opened what must never open. I tried to speak. My mouth filled with salt water. It glided closer. Its limbs dragged on nothing. Its voice was not sound, but pressure behind my teeth. The engine is failing. The prison is cracking. You must make the choice. What choice? I screamed without words. To be the gate or to become the key behind it. The turbine appeared, suspended in air, burning red, wires bleeding like veins. I could hear voices trapped inside, screaming, pleading. Some of them called my name. I saw Carson's face among them. He was alive, but not human anymore. I ran. I do not remember how I left, only that I woke on the floor of my quarters, covered in condensation. My jumpsuit was torn. My fingernails cracked. The spiral had reached my forearm. Someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, there was no one there, only a mirror, and in the mirror, my reflection was smiling, but I was not. The storm hit at 0223. I was already awake, sitting cross-legged on my bunk, staring at the spiral that had now wrapped halfway up my left arm. My veins pulsed around it like roots resisting something growing from beneath. When the wind struck, It howled like a living thing. Not wind, not waves. Something screaming through the metal skeleton of the rig. Something that had been waiting for centuries to be let in. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, but half the monitors stayed black. I checked the terminal in Central. The network was down, radios too. The internal systems were silent, except for a pulsing red warning. Level 4 pressure breach detected. There were no other crew on duty. I knew because the roster was still empty. That was when I saw the corridor again. The red one. It did not appear on level. For this time, it was just behind me, on level 1, outside the mess hall, where the airlock leads to the upper platform. There was no transition. It did not fade in. One moment, it was not there. The next, it was silent, glowing. The red was not light. It was a color that bled out of the walls. I should have walked away. I did not. Something inside me leaned forward before my legs did. Like part of me had already made the decision hours ago. I stepped in. Immediately, sound vanished. Not muffled. Gone. Even my heartbeat. Even my breath. The floor was soft but metallic. The walls undulated, breathing in slow rhythmic waves. The corridor went on longer than the platform's total length. I could feel time stretching as I walked, but I never turned around. I knew the moment I looked back, I would see something I was not ready to see. I passed openings along the corridor, doorways without doors. Inside each was a room filled with objects that made no sense. A hospital bed with restraints and dried blood. A child's tricycle spinning in place. A mirror reflecting a sky I had never seen. Every room had one thing in common. They all had a speaker in the corner, and the speaker whispered my name. Logan, Logan, Logan. I walked for what felt like hours before the corridor ended. The room at the end was pure black. My flashlight did nothing, but the spiral on my arm glowed like a flare. It cast just enough light for me to see that something was waiting. A figure, not the faceless thing from level 5. Something else. This one wore a jumpsuit, and it looked exactly like me. It stepped forward. I stepped back. It matched me step for step. Every movement, every breath. Then it smiled, and when it spoke, it used my voice. We are what you left behind. We are what you will become. I tried to run, but the floor melted beneath my feet. The walls collapsed inward. The sound returned all at once. A crash of screaming, static, alarms, machinery, voices in different languages, numbers, thunder. The turbines groan. The word open shouted 1,000 times per second. Then silence. Again when I woke, I was inside the turbine chamber, alone, flat on my back. Covered in ash. The metal around me was blackened like it had been on fire. There was a message scrawled in soot on the wall beside me. Stop, descending you are not READ. Intercom crackled, but not the one on the wall, the one inside my room. I was in my bed again, in my quarters. The lights were on. The spiral now reached my shoulder. The intercom spoke softly. Logan, you are becoming the red corridor is memory. You are what remains when memory rots. Then it clicked off. I checked the clock. 3 hours had passed, but I had not moved. The storm was still howling, but now it sounded closer, like it had found a way in. The rain stopped at dawn, but the sky never changed. It was still the same shade of rotted metal that had clung over Deadwater Bay for days. Clouds hung low, like they were listening, or waiting. I did not sleep. Instead, I tore apart Central. If I was losing my mind, I needed proof of it. If I was not, I needed answers. I broke into the restricted cabinets, the ones no one used, the ones with real locks, not digital panels. They were rusted and old, like they had not been opened in years. Inside, I found paper, hundreds of documents, printed and yellowed with age, handwritten notes, maps, journals. Some were stamped with the logo of the company that supposedly ran this platform, Dominion North Engineering. But Dominion North Engineering had dissolved in 1984. I flipped through files, marked incident reports, and Level 5 breach logs. There were dozens of names listed under marked personnel. One stood out, Travis Colton, 1981, annotated with a red symbol, a spiral. Travis was a technician, 20-3 years old. First recorded event, spontaneous displacement, he disappeared from Level 2 and reappeared 17 hours later on a closed section of Level 5, unconscious and submerged in oil. When he woke, he spoke in reversed English for 4 days. Then he stopped speaking entirely. Then he carved the spiral into his own chest and opened the airlock. His body was never recovered. There were other names: Ava McBride, 1985, Curtis Hale, 1993, Diana Reed, 2001, Brandon Pierce, 2007, Carson Doyle, 22-3, all with spirals, all with vanishing times, all with last entries that ended in function, key status, offline or replacement, pending. Found a folder at the bottom. It was labeled Original Structure. The diagrams inside made no sense. The platform was not built here. It was relocated, lifted, piece by piece, from another site in Alaska, a now erased location once called Scarwater Ridge. But beneath that was something else. Blueprints for the turbine system. Not mechanical, ritualistic. Its layout was symbolic, drawn to match an ancient diagram found etched into the floor of a burial chamber in Chile. The turbine was never meant to generate power. It was meant to suppress it. Something. I slammed the file shut. My skin crawled. The spiral pulsed. Then I found the video. A black VHS tape in a metal tin. No label. I played it using the dusty monitor in the back room. Grainy footage flickered to life. A man stood in front of the turbine chamber. He looked like me. Not exactly, but close enough that it made my stomach twist. He spoke directly into the camera. If you are watching this, you are the replacement. I do not know your name, but I know your burn. He held up his arm. Same spiral, same skin. He continued, you cannot fix the engine. It was never meant to run. It is a CLA prison, and every time it slows, something slips out. He stepped back. The camera followed. Behind him, the turbine glowed red, but it was not spinning. It was pulsing, and inside its core was a shape. Something pressed against the glass. A face. The man whispered, it sees you, Neon. Once it sees you, you belong to it. The video ended with a static burst. I sat still for a long time. Then the intercom came to life again, but this time, it was not static. It was music, a lullaby, faint. I followed it out of Central, down the stairwell to Level 4. The lights were off. I heard something behind the walls. Scratching. And laughter. Children's laughter. But it echoed wrong, like it came from inside my own head, bouncing against the parts I no longer owned. The turbine was off still, and the door to Level 5 was open. The door to Level 5 was no longer hidden. It stood open, breathing. The flesh tunnel beyond it was darker now, slower, as if the whole level had grown tired of pretending to be machinery. I stepped in, the walls slick with condensation that smelled like rotting seawater. My footsteps made no sound. The turbine had stopped. The seal had broken. I knew before I saw it. There was no air, only pressure. It built behind my ears and inside my skull, a slow crawling tide of static. Every part of my skin itched with invisible heat, like ants moving under the flesh. The corridor led downward in a spiral, endless, winding. A staircase not built by hands. With every step, the spiral on my arm pulsed brighter, hotter. I passed markings on the wall. Symbols like mine burned into the surface, as if branded by something enormous. Some of them glowed when I looked too long. I reached a chamber at the bottom and felt time stop. The room was circular, like the turbine core. but ancient. Its walls were made of bone, not human. Towering columns of ivory curved into each other overhead, woven like fingers into a dome that pulsed with deep, wet light. In the center was a pit. I stood at the edge and looked down. I saw myself, not a reflection, a duplicate, another me, kneeling, head bowed, spiral completely covering his body, from neck to heel. He looked up, and his eyes were gone. In their place, 2 black pits opened, bottomless. He spoke in my voice. You were marked before you were born. You are the next shape, the dream that continues itself. I tried to back away. The edge of the pit cracked. Bones split beneath me. I fell, but not into the hole. I fell sideways. Suddenly, I was standing in the corridor again. But now it was filled with mirrors. Every surface reflected a different version of me. One burned, one old, one broken, one laughing. One whispering. He held out his hand. In his palm was the spiral, and behind him was the turbine running, screaming. It was spinning again, but in reverse, and it was speaking, not with words, with memories. It pulled thoughts from me. My mother's face, the first time I drowned in a lake as a child, the smell of chlorine in the high school pool, the way I felt when I watched Carson disappear. It ripped them out and spun them into its core. I saw the faces of everyone it had taken. Travis, Ava, Curtis, Diana, Brandon, Carson, all twisted, all marked, all smiling with teeth that did not fit their mouths. They were not prisoners. They were apostles, chosen, and I was next. The mirrors shattered. The corridor collapsed. I was back in my quarters, standing, holding a knife. I had carved something into the wall. We are all the dew or blood. Ran down my hand. I had not remembered doing it. My arm pulsed. The spiral had reached my neck. I heard footsteps outside. My door. Dozens of them. Bare feet. Wet. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was full of them. Myself copies. Hundreds of me. Some smiling. Some crying. Some watching. All waiting. Then the lights went out, and I heard the turbine speak one final word. Open. I locked my door, though I knew it would not matter. The copies outside did not knock. They waited, breathing, whispering my thoughts before I could think them. I pushed my back to the wall and stared at the knife in my hand. The blade was still wet, but I did not bleed. I was already changing. When the lights came back on, everything outside was gone. The hallway was empty, except for Carson. He stood at the end of the corridor, facing the wall. His jumpsuit was torn, his skin pale and paper-thin, veins blackened like ink under glass. The spiral covered his scalp now, coiling all the way around his throat like a collar. He turned slowly and smiled. You are catching up, he said, but you are still behind. He did not walk. He slid. Like gravity had stopped applying to him. His feet did not lift. His mouth did not move when he spoke. The words vibrated inside my teeth. They all come back, Logan, but none of them come back. Clint. I ran out past level 2, level 3.2, the communications bay. The backup antenna was still online. I connected the emergency line. Static. Then something clicked. A voice answered. DEATWATER. Station, this is Coastwatch. You are transmitting on a closed line. Identify yourself immediately. My mouth opened, but I did not speak. Instead, something came through the speaker that I did not understand. A voice. My voice. Speaking in a language made of numbers and screams. Then, silence. The man on the other end responded. Whoever this is, you are not authorized. Cut the transmission, or we will. His voice broke. I heard it happen. The line went dead. Then the intercom clicked on. The voice from level 5 spoke again. You brought them back, Logan, you answered. The call you broadcast. The wound. I slammed the receiver down. The platform shuddered. Not from wind, not from machinery, from footsteps. Hundreds of them. I climbed the ladder to the upper deck. and opened the hatch. They had returned. The crew, all of them, marching, single file across the steel deck, in complete silence, every face marked, every spiral glowing. I screamed Carson's name. He did not turn. None of them did. They walked straight to the turbine. They opened the chamber. They began to sing, no words, just a low, vibrating hum that echoed through the entire rig. I felt my organs shift with the frequency. The turbine responded. It spun once in reverse, then forward, then stopped, then it spoke. Not in English, not in any language. I knew it spoke through memory. Suddenly, I was 10 years old again, drowning in a pond in Michigan. I was 15, watching my father hang himself in the garage. I was 20, staring into the eyes of the man I had just killed in a bar fight in Yakima. These were not memories I wanted to keep. They were anchors, and the turbine wanted to cut them loose. I felt something snap in my mind. Not break, transform. The spiral burned. White dash hot dot. I stumbled back down into the lower levels, to the storage room, where we kept the hazmat suits. I needed to cover the mark. I needed to feel human. When I pulled the suit from the rack, something fell out. A photo of me, wearing the suit, standing next to Carson, in front of the turbine, only the date printed on the back. Read, 1991. Before I was born. I looked back at the wall. New writing had appeared. The tide never forgets. ITS, SHAP. Then I heard knocking. Not from the hallway, from inside the walls. Something was trying to come through. The knocking continued for 6 hours. I did not move. I sat in the dark, in the cold suit, holding the knife, watching the wall twitch every few minutes, as if breathing were trying to begin inside it. The platform above me creaked and moaned, with the rhythm of a heartbeat I no longer believed was mechanical. When the sound stopped, it was not because the thing behind the wall gave up. It was because it no longer needed to knock. The walls peeled back like skin, and behind them was not steel. It was another corridor, not red, not black, white. Blinding, so bright, it stung my teeth. The corridor hummed with the sound of every scream I had never let out. I stepped through, and the turbine was waiting. But it had changed. It was no longer a machine. It was a throat, a living tunnel of spinning bone and muscle and whispering spirals. It rotated slowly, but there was no axis. The air around it bent, pulling time in like water through a drain. There were people inside it, suspended faces I recognized. Carson, Ava, Travis, the others. Their eyes were open, their mouths moving, but they were not breathing. They were reciting something, a phrase in a voice too deep to be human. It comes up through the black. It feeds on the memory of shape. It must be remembered to remain forgotten. It. The turbine's center was a pulsing core, like a heart, like an egg. It opened, and I saw what was inside. I do not have words for it, but I can try. It was not a creature. It was a pattern, a spiral made of light and time and bone and sound. It had no eyes, but it saw me. It had no mouth, but it sang. It had no hands, but I felt it touch every thought I had ever buried. It showed me the first, marked, not Travis, not even human. The spiral was older than language, older than stone. It was discovered, not created, a wound left behind by something that tried to exit the world too fast and tore a hole in the underside of time. The turbine was not meant to contain it. It was meant to feed it. Every marked person was another offering. Each spiral, another connection. A memory burned deep enough to become a shape, and I was the next. But I was different, because I still remembered what it was like to forget. I stepped forward. The spiral on my body burned until it peeled my skin away. Underneath, I saw something else. Bone marked with symbols, the same bones used to build level 5. I had always belonged here. I was not sent to fix the turbine. I was sent to replace what escaped. Carson appeared beside me. He did not speak. He opened his mouth and let the spiral pour out. It wrapped around me. Tight. Final. The turbine screamed once more, and then it stopped completely. No movement, no light, no sound. I woke on the floor of the control room. The suit was gone. The spiral was gone. The crew was gone. The platform was dead. But I was still here. I checked the camera feed. Level 5 was sealed again. The turbine no longer responded to commands. Central showed no pressure readings. The storm had cleared, and I was alone, except for one thing. There was a new message, blinking on the terminal. Replacement. Function online Nesperal stabilized substot, except that he leaned back and smiled, because I finally understood. The turbine was not a prison, it was a lighthouse, and I was the light. I do not remember how long I have been here. Time is different now. Not slower, not faster, just ... circular. Like the spiral itself, like the turbine always was. It turns when I turn. It waits when I wait. It feeds when I remember. Sometimes I sleep, and when I sleep, I dream of water that forgets how to stay. Liquid. I dream of mouths opening inside mouths, of teeth that are not used for eating, of myself, walking the corridors of this platform, but taller, bent in strange ways. Smiling with bones that do not belong to me. I dream of voices saying my name before I was ever born. But most of all, I dream of arrival. And today, it happened. They came. A new crew. 7 of them, from a new company, under a new name, Kraymore, Deep Systems. But I know the truth. The name always changes. The place does not. The spiral brings them. Every generation, every few decades. One of the crew is a technician. His name is Daniel Walker. He is young, eager, smiles too much. The others treat him like he is made of glass. He is not the replacement. Not yet. But he will be. He has already seen it. The symbol. Not fully. Just a flicker. On a clipboard. On a wall. In a dream. He will ignore it. They always do. Until it starts to itch. Until it starts to burn. Until it begins to whisper. I watch them through the vents. I am not flesh anymore. Not entirely. I exist between the walls now. Between the turbines, rotations. I am in the silence between waves. The darkness behind closed eyelids. I am the spiral remembering itself through others. And I am growing. The turbine is not just a seal anymore. It is a seed. And I am blooming last night. Daniel walked alone to level 4, just like I did. He stopped at the hatch to level 5. It was closed. But he heard something behind it, breathing. He leaned in close, then smiled. I saw the mark on his hand, just beginning to form. A shallow swirl, like a scar made from fire and memory. He does not know what it means, not yet, but he will. They all do. Because the spiral never stops. It only waits, and when it turns again, it will turn with my shape.